I think we're live. We're getting into it with Eddie Goeke, ladies and gentlemen, on a special Thursday edition of the Meat of the Matter.
Else is sick and fucking tired of seeing all the carnivore shit all over these fucking apps. No one cares if you only eat meat. Every single one of you have to identify by carnivore fucking Connie, carnivore Ken, whatever the fuck your name is, and you add carnivore to the end of it on your fucking bio is fucking weird. Weird. You're literally treating your diet like a fucking religion. A religion. A meat religion. Okay? Like, what in the absolute meat fuck is this shit? Your fucking forts with your eggs and your cheese and your fucking butter and your dates. Who cares? You can't shit. Your fiber intake is fucking zero, and you think you're just fucking trudging through life getting all healthy. Get the fuck out of here. No one cares. Your meat fucking ass. Your meat farts. Your meat sweats.
Welcome into this special Thursday live edition of the Meat of the Matter. We have a special guest today. He is an author. He's been busy lately. His channel has been all about what we're going to talk about today for quite a bit of carnivores that are jumping ship. His name is Eddie Goeke. His book is Contraindicated, and I like to consider it a carnivore desk reference. Eddie, it's an amazing book. Well done, and thanks for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad you enjoy the book. I'm looking forward to talking about this recent controversy. I've already been doing it for over 2 weeks now, just hammering it in, because basically what I've said is if people are going to talk, I'm going to yell. That's basically the idea behind it. I can't give them an inch. That's
nice. Yeah. I think Mark's been doing some yelling too. I think in his fine little Irish way. How are we doing, Peter? How are you doing, Mark?
All good, sir. All good. Yeah, looking forward to this.
So yeah, it seems like, I don't know where the logic is, but a lot of the stuff, people are jumping ship. They're just I don't know if they're just making excuses or what's going on, but yeah, it's happening. Carbs are okay apparently in the carnivore world to quite a few of the people that we've been following for years. And so let's just, how has been the last 2 weeks, Eddie? Like, what have you been noticing?
Well, this all started really with it was a little more than 2 weeks ago. I mean, we're approaching we're approaching the month-long mark actually, and the first instance that I saw of this was actually with two influencers primarily. The primary one of relevance would be Zane Griggs. Zane, you guys may have heard of him before and seen his content and material. Material might be giving a little too much credence to the quality of his content, actually. But Zane is someone that featured in the Animal documentary. He's someone that was a proponent of low carb, at least low carb, but also a carnivorous way of eating, of course, since he was in that documentary for really 20 years. I believe his book that he wrote had it had a piece written by Ken Berry in it. So this person has been a proponent of this for a while. He really gained his physique on that style of eating as well. And then all of a sudden, he just started talking about, really, I say all of a sudden, I mean, it was within the last year or two that he started to bump elbows with people that were like this, but he never really went and made the full change and transition. But now he's been very vocal and very vociferous about this. He's been saying things like, "Oh, well, actually, now I'm going to be I'm eating 60+% of my calories from carbohydrates every day, and here's why you should too." Basically, that approach, and that's one of my major concerns. To just put a first comment here, if you want to go ahead and do something, if you want to go from carnivore to vegan, I mean, think of the most extreme change that you can make. I'm going to think that's crazy. You go ahead and do that, though. As soon as you start saying something like, "Oh, here's why you should as well," we're gonna have some problems, because that's the biggest problem I have as well. The same as you, Eddie. I have no problems with people going on these diets or whatever. Whatever you want to do with your life, that's absolutely fine. But if you've got a huge following, then you need to keep it to yourself, because not everybody's going to be the same as you. And we need to understand this. And what's really annoying me about this is we have so many carnivores in the carnivore space that we've looked up to for a very, very long time. And everybody's agreeing with them now. All of a sudden, they're just coming out and saying that
the carbohydrates are amazing. They're doing amazing things for me. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. I came into this space because of you, because of what
Right.
you've been telling me. And now you're telling me that I should be eating, I should be eating carbohydrates. Like, it's just,
Yes.
it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention, all of it is based off of flawed science. I mean, really, it's based on three things. It's based on money, fear, and misinterpretation. That is really what this has to do with. Money, we obviously know that's a common culprit here. And typically, I've said this a million times now, I'm going to keep saying it because I think a lot of people don't actually believe it. I do not like cynicism. It's not good for the person being cynical. It's also not good for the people that are surrounded by that person because it's just a drain on them. However, if you don't have any cynicism in life, you're going to have some problems. You need to have it. You need to have it because for situations like this. I hate constantly having to say money has a role to play in all this. I wish it weren't true. I wish it weren't true. I am a forgiving person, and oftentimes what I'll do is that'll be the last thing that I think of is, it's got to be money. It's got to be money because I'm trying to be forgiving to the other person. Like trying to find I'm trying to steel man them and their position. But unfortunately, I just had a conversation. It's not out yet at the time of doing this, but I just recently had a conversation with Olivia Quadja, who runs Anthony Chafee's coaching community or carnivore community. And she coaches people within that community and outside of it. And before this, she had large influence over the government because she worked very closely with them, particularly in the UK. And at one point, she worked very closely with a particular doctor about, how she worked with him on this type of approach, a dietary approach. And they went up to government officials and they said, "Hey, look, we're showing you how much money you can save in doctor practices and physician practices by just getting people off of these medications." Because they don't need them anymore. Like, we're actually trying to save you money. And what they said bluntly, they said, "Listen, that's great. And that actually is great. That's great. The problem is we cannot put pharma jobs at risk that way." They literally said that to her. And I was talking to her and I was going, if we're going to try and play devil's advocate as much as possible, you can almost understand where they're coming from, because if they were to do that, they would lose their position, wouldn't they? Put them at risk. It's a dynamic that is very difficult to navigate through. And so what she said, and I think she's totally right, and that's what we've been saying, is this is not a movement that we can effectuate from the top down. They tried that. That's not going to work. We have to do it from the bottom up, grassroots type of movement. But she said, I know that was a little tangential, but she said in regards to this controversy, she said, "Look, I'm someone that's very familiar with marketing. I'm very familiar with business. I have always, every single time this happens, because it seems to be like once a year at least, someone goes, 'Oh, carnivore's dead.' They try and get this whole thing go, 'Oh, carnivore's dead. Carnivore's old news now.'" She said, every single time it's happened, I've always thought, well, maybe they're just misunderstanding something. Same approach that I'm saying that I've been going through. Maybe they're misunderstanding something. Maybe they're getting too ahead of themselves. She said this is the first time that she's never been so confident that this has to do with people being paid off, specifically people like Zane Griggs, because she knows the shift. And I had suspicions of this as well. You guys probably did too. We have an eye out for this stuff. The shift in the type of content that Zane was making to the stuff he's making now, it was so starkly different. You can tell that there's been a change, and not just with Zane, but other influencers as well that have been doing this. There has been money involved. And what I said to her was, I suppose the subsequent question to this is whether or not they were paid off first, and that's why they changed their positions. They already had little to no integrity, so they easily changed their positions just because they were paid off. Or if it was because they actually were convinced because of this fear-mongering and misinterpretation, and therefore they found an opportunity to make money off of that change and that shift in ideology. I'm thinking, unfortunately, again, forgive the cynicism, I'm thinking the former, because when you look at the integrity of Zane Griggs, I mean, to fold that easily, you can't have even the slightest bit of integrity in order to fold after 20 years of promoting this way of eating.
Exactly. Yeah.
Immediately to high carb. I mean, we're not talking 20 grams a day. We're talking hundreds of grams a day.
Yeah.
And this is ridiculous.
That's a suspicious thing, right? I mean, you have Dr. Cywes going for a little bit of carb with the whole insulin suppression story. There you can think, okay, he is thinking about something, but introducing such a large amount, it's way too much. Yeah.
Hundreds. I mean, we're talking like 400 grams a day. And it's like you can't justify, oh, well, you know what? I was wrong for 20 years. 20 years this was working fine. And then I started to have thyroid problems, whatever those actually constituted or how those were characterized, whether or not you actually had the thyroid problems in the first place, et cetera, et cetera. All these questions that are left unanswered. It's like, yeah, okay, so you purportedly started to develop these problems. So then you dump hundreds of grams of carbohydrates into your body a day?
And you ever notice with his videos lately, he's doing all his videos with his top off. Have you noticed that in the last?
Yes.
Every video that he's doing is like, look at my body. I'm in amazing shape. This is how you're going to do it. And this is what we're seeing at the moment. This happens all the time. Yep. That when you see these influencers, the first thing they do is they take their top off and they're in front of the camera and they're like, look at me. Because why are they doing that? Because it's a great sales strategy. It's like
that's exactly what Olivia said.
Yeah, that's the best way of pulling these people in. Now, I can tell you right now, just by looking at Zane Greg, I've looked at him a few times. This guy is enhanced. I don't give a shit what anybody else tells me. He's either on TRT, he's taking some sort of enhancement. There's no way in hell this guy is taking 400 grams of carbohydrates a day and looks like that.
Right.
There's no doubt in my mind. So he's lying to people. So when we look at what they're telling us, that you look at Lisa's story. Lisa's been telling us now for 16 years that she's been doing carnivore. And then all we're doing is we're asking the question, okay, maybe so, but why are you introducing carbohydrates? And then when you look at Barkay's video, Barkay does an absolute amazing video on this because she says she told the whole world that she never had any alcohol in her home, but Barkay picked her up on this. There's around 5 pictures of Lisa in front of the camera. And guess what's at the back? You've got a bottle of whiskey, a bottle of vodka, and she clearly stated there's no alcohol in her home whatsoever. She can't understand why she couldn't lose the weight. So we're only taking their word for this.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. I mean, and then I think, from my understanding, she tried to play it off and said, no, I didn't have any on my kit, like in a specific location, and it was like, well, that's a little suspicious because it's like, well, that's not what we're actually talking about. It's not what we're trying to get across. It's like whether you had access to it or not, and we're using it. And that also, if she was caught sort of at least being a little furtive about that, it raises questions about what else she's trying that she was doing or maybe not doing that could have contributed to her problems. And the other thing is menopause. I mean, if you're going to try and extrapolate, if you're going to try and inform upon an entire population how they should be eating based on your experience through premenopause, that's not an optimal approach. It's not a reasonable approach. There's other things that you can do. There's other holistic interventions that you can do to allow yourself to maintain a carnivorous diet because it is still species appropriate for you, without telling people, well, they need to eat lots of carbohydrates because, Zane Griggs is in. I mean, it all goes back. All these influencers I've been seeing, they're all hooking up with Zane Griggs, basically. Mm-hmm. It's like they've learned from him in a way. Like he has influence over all of them. And I'm going, this is a man who literally said in a video that I reacted to of him whenever this first started, because as soon as I saw this, I went, nope, we have to crack down on this immediately. This is a man who said that you cannot turn fat into glucose. Not true. No, you can't turn fat into glucose. And this is a man who also says the glucagon is a stress hormone.
Well, yeah, that's actually what I jumped on was when he started talking about gluconeogenesis being a bad thing and stressful. And, like he was, if he's been around for 20 years, he's talking about, Anthony Chafee says this a lot, that ketosis might be our natural state. We've just forgotten how to be in it. And now all of a sudden this is bad. And now gluconeogenesis is a stress. That was where I was like, whoa, hold on here, buddy. Like it's every animal's natural state, because every single terrestrial animal on this planet, besides like hummingbirds and sunbirds, very, very, very few exceptions, because they're nectarivores, they are in ketosis. They use fat for fuel. They don't eat lots of simple carbohydrates. Where are they acquiring the simple carbohydrates? Because you could make more. It's still a very, very, very weak argument, but logically speaking, on a logical basis, you could make more arguments for humans being for carbohydrates being appropriate for humans to consume than you can for literally any other terrestrial animal. They're not able to acquire honey. They're not able to acquire it at all. Yeah.
And it's like they're eating strictly, like they're either fermenting the fiber they're eating if they're herbivores into fat, and also other essential nutrients that they're deriving from the fermentation of that fiber, Or they are, if they're carnivorous, they're eating meat, which has very little carbohydrate in it, because, has very minimal extant glycogen, sure, but so what? That is a very minimal amount. We're talking about, in a human being, from the people that have been studied, like 400 grams of glycogen for all skeletal muscle on the body. Yeah, how much is that per pound? And that's in a living human. We're not talking about a significant amount of glycogen in meat at all. And then for omnivores, same thing there. Okay, they're eating a little bit of meat, but then in the terms of the plant material they're eating, it's not full of simple carbs. It's fiber still. It's plant material. And so you want to say that ketosis is ketosis is stressful. And a high efficiency rate or high rate of dependence on gluconeogenesis, that's stressful. It's like, first of all, you don't mean stressful, you mean distressing, because everything in the body is stressful, because that just means work. It's literally all it means. But even if we're like, okay, fine, benefit of the doubt, that's what you're trying to say. How can you say that when literally, tell that to any other animal?
Yeah.
Like, how is it different in us? How is it different in them, all of them, every terrestrial animal, besides those slight exceptions, and then not us? It's like you can't make that argument. And he doesn't understand the biochemistry. He doesn't understand metabolism. I think what has happened is he's been told to read from a script. Here's your set of dogma that you now have. Say this, find ways to insert it into what you're saying casually, and beguile your audience into believing that they should be eating lots of carbohydrates, and then record yourself with your shirt off so that people can think that you're a reliable, credible source, despite the fact that people don't understand that you actually acquired that physique, like Mark said, through peptides and hormone usage, clearly. But also, even if that weren't the case, like just in theory, by being on a carnivorous diet or a low-carb diet for 20 years. Because that's what you promoted for 20 years. So again, purportedly, I guess you could say, because who's to actually say that he's been doing that? He's been promoting it, but how much has he actually been doing it? Same thing, it goes back to the Lisa Wiedemann argument that we've been talking about with the alcohol usage and maybe some other things as well. But still, that he does not understand metabolism. It was very clear from that video that I did on him, where he was talking about this very thing. And so how could, I know that was the introduction. It was this, how could a low carb diet cause, high glucose and increase your risk of diabetes? And it was like, okay, yeah, let's get into this. And it was very clear. He didn't understand anything. I'm sure that we can get into the fear and the misrepresentation part of this. We did the money part, but I'm sure we can get into that later, and what people are, to cut through the noise on the confusion here about some things that can happen on carnivore, which can happen. But
I was wondering, Eddie, have you seen any one of these influencers explain how much carbohydrates you have to introduce? Because that's the thing that bothers me a lot, that they don't say like, well, you need 20 or 30 grams a day or 50, and for this specific reason, like for the thyroid, how much do you need for the thyroid to function properly?
Right, good question. They don't answer that question. And because
nowhere, right?
Yeah, in theory, if we put ourselves in a universe where exogenous carbs were required for some sort of optimal function that way, you would have to tell people how much, because you can't just say that there's an infinite amount of something that you can consume. You can't even say that for fat and protein. There's a limit to which that limit is usually set by, we give the limit, which is typically that's set by your own satiety signaling. But carbohydrates work differently. Like, you can get too much water, you can get too much of anything. So even if carbohydrates were required for this, you have to give a limit. You can't just sit here and say, oh, well, you need carbs for this, therefore have as many as you'd like. Because then that just lets people get away with having orange juice every morning and like multiple glass, and drinking honey from a jar like Paul Saladino does, and vaunts, like he literally comes out and says that this is a great thing to do. I do this all the time. I'm on an airplane. Oh, well, I drink honey from my jar. It's like, well, the fact that they look at this and they believe that this is an appropriate, healthy thing to do, and as I say, indicated thing to do is absolutely asinine. I mean, it's the amount of delusion, or the amount of delusion that you have to put yourself through, and that you put inside your brain is exorbitant.
And that's the key. And that's the key word there, isn't it, Eddie? Like, healthy. Like, you can't tell me that eating a carbohydrate is healthy, because you've been telling me for years it's a non-essential macronutrient, and now you're telling me that it's healthy. It's like, well, hang on a second. And this is why I would love to have this conversation with these people, because the first question I would ask is this: apart from a body composition standpoint, tell me one good reason why you're introducing carbohydrates. Just one. Mm-hmm. And apart from changing your body, which we all know, because well, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I was on carbohydrate diet. I could get in shape easily, no problem.
Mhm.
The problem I had is I couldn't sustain it. And at the moment, I have a few clients at the moment that need to have carbohydrates in the diet. I have no problem with that. The problem I have is, okay, if we're going to add them in, how much can you actually tolerate? And for most people, they can only tolerate a very, very minimal amount because it sets them off. Now, if I'm gonna add carbohydrates into the diet, okay, I'm gonna look at, okay, where's the best time to put them in? Now, for me, what I see the best improvements with people from a body composition standpoint now is before the workout, because they're gonna burn it off then during the workout, and then when the workout's over, we get back to the normal carnivore diet way, and I see a tremendous results doing this way. But I want to make this perfectly clear. I'm not saying we're doing this from a health standpoint. I'm only doing this because I've seen benefits from a body composition standpoint. So I can see that they look a little bit better, they look a little bit fuller. That's all I'm talking about here.
That's the key. Yeah, because if you can fill your glycogen stores and it'll make you look fuller. It's hydration of the muscle. It's hydration of the muscle, and then that's really what I just recently did. It's not out yet, but it will be out soon. I just recently finally got a hold of Dr. Jaquish himself, and I did an interview with him where we actually talk about that specifically, because he is someone that built his physique. And he never claims, and he said this in the interview because I pressed him on this. I said, I asked him, what do you have to say for people that say that, okay, you didn't build your physique with low carb since high school. Actually, you built it because you took some steroids or something like that. And he said, well, I've never claimed to be fully natural. What I've said is I have a natural level of testosterone. The only thing that he's ever taken is exogenous testosterone. He still takes it because he had an injury that requires him to have TRT. So it's not even because he's trying to enhance his muscle fiber and his physique. It's because he was having extreme problems. He had a very weak heart as a result of that because of a ropey injury. And so he's taking TRT. But even before that, he built his physique strictly with very minimal to basically no carbohydrates, and with a variable resistance device that he has, the X3 bar. I don't know how familiar you guys are with him, if you've seen him around before. Yeah,
I like him. He's good.
Yeah.
I like his that device that you're saying is pretty cool.
Yeah, I have one. I actually have one. It works very well. But he explains that he's familiar enough with the literature on this, and more than I am, because he has a tilt towards the fitness sphere more than the diet nutrition sphere. But he was like, you give people, wrong unit, but it gets the point across. It's like people are fed like 300 calories a day, like very very minimal food intake. They will build muscle as long as it's the right material that they're actually given. So people think that you have to necessarily eat big, and I'm not saying that you have to eat you're not going to build a lot of muscle regularly if you're eating a very small quantity every day. I'm not saying that, but it's like, depending on the circumstance, as long as you give the body what it needs and it's in a healthy environment, and you get enough of an insulin response because of the makeup of what you're actually giving these people, you can build muscle. Carbohydrates themselves, in every single study that he's seen, and it's very clear. I mean, it's very clear, but it's just a way to supplement what we've been saying and to reinforce it. It's protein that builds muscle. It's nothing else. It's not carbohydrates. It's not carbohydrates.
Can I just add? Sorry, Eddie. Can I?
Go ahead.
No, I mean, this is what really, really frustrates me, because we have so many people on the internet that can say that you can build muscle, a lot of muscle within 2 months. This drives me crazy, because the average person is going to build between 3 and maybe 7 pounds of muscle a year. This is not over like a 2 month period, a 3 month period. And as you get older, that comes down. So you're looking at probably around maybe 2 to 4% of body fat, muscle per year. This drives me crazy, because I've been doing this now for over 5 years, and I've consistently stuck to it for 5 years. And I'm a lot bigger now. I'm a lot bigger now than what I was, say, 5 years ago. Okay,
right.
5 years ago, I was around maybe 140 pounds, something like that. I'm now 155. I can tell you right now, that extra 15 pounds that I put on, I'd say about 95% of that is muscle. I'm convinced, because I look bigger, and I haven't eaten any carbohydrates in that time. So I think people need to understand you can build muscle, but it takes time. And when you add carbohydrates into the diet, yes, the muscle looks bigger, but you need to understand it's an illusion.
The muscle looks bigger on a cow when they're fattened up because they're storing intramuscular fat.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're it's like that's how physiology works. Just a bigger muscle doesn't necessarily mean a stronger one. And then people
Can I just add in one more point? When I was a rugby player, I was very, very lean when I started my rugby career. When I came out of rugby, I was huge. I've spoken about this many, many times on podcasts. I was around 280, 300 pounds. I was a big, big guy. Now, back then, I thought that was all muscle because I hadn't got a clue about nutrition back then because I was working with these elite coaches and they were telling me like 60% of your overall food intake should come from carbohydrates. I went by the experts. They told me what I needed to eat. So I was on a heavily based carbohydrate diet for over 6 years. And this is when I ballooned up. I ballooned up unbelievably huge. I had all this mass. I was able to lift an awful lot of weight in the gym, but I knew I couldn't sustain it because I was walking around. I was breathing heavy. I couldn't last 10 minutes on the pitch. Every time I walked up the stairs, I'd be sweating. I was like, this is not normal.
Yeah, no.
I can't live like this for the rest of my life. And that's what we're currently seeing at the moment is that the average person is walking around. They're metabolically unhealthy. You can clearly see what the problem is. They're carrying all this excess water, and I'm like, why are you carrying this in the first place? Like, why do you need to be inflamed? Your inflammation is coming from the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating. So, when you're telling me that carbohydrates are essential in the diet, well, then if they're essential in the diet, then why are you walking around feeling like crap?
Yeah.
Well, there's that too, right?
Yeah.
All things, like from what I see, like if I ever, I'm not perfect. I treat myself from time to time and I feel like crap after. I feels great while I'm eating the ice cream. Amazing. And then after the reality hits in and it's not good. It's just, and I like to think of it from a natural, like an ancestral standpoint that I've said before. When in hell would all these carbohydrates be available to an animal, a human growing or living life? Maybe some fruit in season if you're by the equator, but if you're up north, and that's the thing that I just don't understand how they're switching that to now they're necessary. And it's like, I don't buy it, man. And I don't like, you can't, potatoes have season, rice has season, wheat has season, but we seem to be taking all the stuff that fed starving people and making it essential now. And it just doesn't.
Yeah.
What I see is that when I eat about 20 grams of carbohydrates, I can just manage it with insulin. If it goes above, then I will not consistently manage to keep it in range. And I think that number makes sense because, if you look in nature, you might find the old style watermelon or so, and maybe you would find 15 or maybe 20 grams of carbohydrates, but not much more. And in those rare cases that you would find it, or if you would find honey, then maybe as a human you would eat everything and feel sick the next day. But it would happen once a year or so. Yep. And I think also what I also notice is if I do this more than say 2 or 3 times a day, and I go above 70, 100 grams of carbs a day, I will just notice it the days after that with insulin management, basal goes up and all those things. And if I continue for a few days, well, that's maybe not really fair, but then I get in this transition phase probably from being fat adapted, and then my body tries to go towards carb, and that I don't know if that's maybe full Randall cycle or so, but that's really disastrous. But the transition.
And then when we look at what's going on when they're talking about health and they're looking at their H1C, and this is what we're seeing at the moment, that it's been elevated. And they're like, oh my God, I've been eating protein and fats for such a long time. It's really, really high. I'm like, okay, again, we've had this conversation before, but the first question I would ask these people is, okay, it's high, but how do you feel? Like,
yes, yes.
Why don't we ask these questions instead of going to see your doctor? If you're feeling amazing, why do you need to go and see your doctor in the first place?
If anybody wants to know about the hemoglobin A1C, we had Stephen Thomas on last week, and he explained it beautifully. Like, why?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm sure I've had Stephen on my, on my channel many, many, many times, and I'm sure I know exactly what he said. which is that if you're even going to consider an HbA1c, go ahead and pair it with a reticulocyte rate, and go ahead and look and see whether or not it's actually reflective of a higher glycation rate, or if it's reflective of a longer lifespan of your red blood cells. That's really what that's what it comes down to. If you want a better measure, a more direct measure of a glycation rate, you would look at a fructosamine assay, which you may have mentioned before as well, which is a measure of your rate of glycation of your albumin and globulins in your blood plasma, which is a better inference. I think the most important tests, people are focused on A1C, fasting glucose, and ketones. That's what everyone's focused on. I think all three of those are the wrong tests. I'll actually get into the ketone one a bit. Because some people think that that's actually not problematic at all. And I'll tell you why that very well could be. I think fasting insulin, I think fructosamine assay, and if you really, really, really want to, you could consider getting a respiratory exchange ratio measured, but you're not going, a commercially available product is not going to measure one. It's going to roughly estimate one. You may have heard of these Lumen devices.
Yeah.
They're rough estimates. People need to understand that before they even invest in one. They're rough because they do not measure the oxygen that you're breathing in. They only measure carbon dioxide out, and they construct a ratio based on an algorithm. You need to understand that, like 15 to 20% error around the signal whenever you're looking at that, if you're going to invest in one. But if you really want one, you can get something like that, and that is purported to, it estimates how much your body is using of fat, ketones, and carbohydrate for fuel. Because people are worried about that. That's why they're looking at their ketones. They're worried, like, okay, am I actually in ketosis? And this is, I'll lead that into the ketone discussion. I have a video coming out on this very soon as well, where ketones. Let me tell a little short story here. Whenever I started up my, making videos, there were one or two comments I would get every few months, and it was like, well, my A1C, my fasting blood glucose, those are high, and my ketones are almost at zero. Carnivore isn't working for me. I'm doing something wrong. Now, at first, when I looked at this, I was like, well, maybe they're eating like too much dairy and therefore overeating on protein, having more supply-driven gluconeogenesis, blah, 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 blah. And those are considerations for certain people, sure. But I sort of wrote that off, and I was like, well, I'm not someone that is taking on clients right now. So I have my own things that I'm taking care of. I can't really like spend time.
Yeah, you need the
hours with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. I need the context. So I was like, well, I don't have time to look at that. And I can consider it maybe in a video later down the line, but not right now. Once this recent controversy started up, I heard this claim more often. And I went, okay, all right, maybe it's more common than I thought. Maybe. Let me sit down and think about it. I never look things up first, believe it or not. I go based on what I know now. And I just sit there and I close my eyes and I think about things. And this is exactly what I did. I was sitting on my couch. And I go, okay, all right, fine. Let me think about this. So I thought, okay, how are ketones produced? Well, ketones are produced in the liver solely. They're not produced anywhere else. Okay, why are they produced? Well, interestingly, the reason they're produced is because when you're in a fat adapted state, your liver takes on a lot more fat oxidation, a lot more. But while it's taking on a lot more fat oxidation, those are always in the contexts of carbohydrate abstention or restriction. So what also is ramped up in the liver is gluconeogenesis. So if you think of, gluconeogenesis as a pathway that goes this direction and fatty acid oxidation as a pathway that goes this direction, there's actually a substrate, there's an intermediate that links both of them, that they both depend on. And it's a molecule by the name of oxaloacetate, OAA. Now, the thing about this substrate is that whenever you're undergoing lots of both of these pathways, gluconeogenesis, fatty acid oxidation, the amount of oxaloacetate in the cell tends to dip in concentration compared to like normal individuals that are eating plenty of carbs and whatnot. They have more than someone that's, it starts to trend downward. Now, what happens as a result of this is this oxaloacetate, the way that it goes into the fatty acid oxidation pathway is it combines with a molecule called acetyl-CoA to form citrate. That's how it starts the Krebs cycle. That's what's going on. Well, if you have a dip in oxaloacetate, less acetyl-CoA can bind to form citrate. So less of it's actually going through to produce ATP. It's not like there's 0% going through. It's still the majority that's going through, but some of it isn't. And so some of it starts to build up. So what happens? It starts to stack, effectively, analogously speaking, they start to stack upon each other. The acetyl units, they start to stack upon each other and you form ketone bodies. That's how you're producing these ketones. It's because the rate at which the liver can keep up with the fat coming to it, it's less. Okay. So a lot of people might infer from that. They go, oh, that means that it's stressful You can already hear the arguments in your head. That means the ketosis is stressful. Fatty acid oxidation is stressful because it can't keep up. Yeah, right. But here's the thing that's very interesting. The more fat adapted you become,
the more efficient
it gets at producing ATP from the fat that it receives. It's not like you're producing no ketones. I mean, you produce ketones even in a carbohydrate diet fed state. You're still producing some. It just happens. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you produce none, but you very well could not produce as many the more fat adapted you become. That's the first detail that can influence a decrease on number on your ketone meter. The second thing is the rate of ketone utilization goes up as well.
Using them.
You're using more of them. So the brain is going to depend primarily on ketones. Specifically, the neurons themselves are basically going to be 95% ketone utilization. The other 5% isn't carbs, by the way, it's lactate. People want to say, oh, well, you can only get to about 80% ketone utilization in the brain. It's like if you exclude the cells that actually require glucose in the brain, it's basically 95% of them, with the other 5% being lactate from the cells that require glucose, because it's a byproduct of glucose metabolism. So like that, people forget that. There's no requirement for glucose in a neuron. Yeah. Not true. None. So that's the first thing. But in the skeletal muscles and the heart, they're also going to be using ketones. They're primarily still going to be using fat, but they still use some of the ketones that are produced. And so the rate at which they're taken up, because, the more phenotypically adapted you get to the diet, the more enzymes you produce, for ketone utilization, ketone breakdown, those are going to go up as well. And it's going to increase your efficiency, which also has an influence on showing a lower number on your ketone meter. Ketone meter only shows what is in the blood.
Excess.
Yeah, it doesn't show what is being used. That is a fact. And so what I said was, okay, well, the real question becomes, if people want to look at what they're using, that's really why they're looking at a ketone reading in the first place. They want to know they're in ketosis. They want to know it's more broad than that. They don't even want to specifically know if they're in ketosis. They want to make sure they're not using carbohydrates. That's really what it is. They want to make sure they're in a fat burning or ketone burning state. And so I said, well, what's a better inference? You would actually look at what is literally being used by the cell. Well, the only way that we have to do this is through respiratory gas analysis. But that's only done in like laboratories with PhDs, where they hook these athletes up to breath machines and they measure oxygen consumption in, carbon dioxide consumption out. And the reason they do that is because carbohydrate metabolism produces more carbon dioxide. It's a higher carbon dioxide to oxygen ratio. It's about 1.00. That's the Rapedian crowd will say that that's why you should be consuming carbs, because, you produce more carbon dioxide and carbon dioxide is protective. Yeah, nonsense. But anyway, it is true that it's all based on a kernel of truth. More carbon dioxide is produced through carbohydrate metabolism. Fat oxidation, 0.7, fat and ketone, 0.89. That's really, those are the reference, those are the average ranges for that. And so if you don't want to spend $5,000 on a kit to do that at home, the only thing that you could do is estimate it, and with a 15 to 20% error range. And so people can consider getting a Lumen device. I'm not sponsored by them. I just recently started talking about it. And I don't think that I'll ever sponsor them, because I would rather something directly measure something than providing a super rough estimate that, if anything, could actually provide more confusion than comfort. And so I throw that in as a bonus third test if people want to do that. But the major tests that I think are most important is a fasting insulin. If you've got low fasting insulin, you're not using carbs for fuel. People need to understand that. That's not happening. Like you are not doing that. Okay. The only time that you're going to be doing that is if you're undergoing high intensity training, because there's different pressures that cause you to shift over to carbohydrate metabolism, even with lower insulin. And then the fructosamine assay, if people are genuinely concerned about a higher glycation rate, compare that to the normative ranges, people that are actually sustaining lots of glycation. Is it vastly lower? Well, then forget the higher fasting blood glucose, forget the higher HbA1c, forget that. I mean, and as Mark said, the ultimate things to look at before you even look at any tests is, how are you feeling? What is your presentation? Because this all goes back to the Hippocratic Oath. Okay, the two principles of the Hippocratic Oath, which is if your patient or your client, whatever it may be, whoever it may be, if they are not presenting with symptoms or they do not present with any identifiable disease process that's asymptomatic, because that can happen, then you are obligated to not intervene. It is not the most perfect system, okay? It is it's the best system. It's not a perfect system. No system is perfect. Can you, even when you're undergoing that sort of criteria, making sure that your client meets these criteria, if they don't meet those criteria, is it possible that they're still sick? Is it possible that they're still diseased? Yes, that's always a possibility, but the alternatives are worse. Intervening when there's no disease process, there's no bad presentation, that's worse. You're posing more risk than if you just left them alone.
And that's leads into the statistic that's often not talked about, is the medical error statistic. That is right. That's.
I talked about it. It's the third leading cause of death, according to Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, nobody seems to mention that one when they're mentioning stats, and that's a big deal. Right?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this fasting insulin. I mean, as a type 1 diabetic, in the morning I inject extra insulin to cover the dawn phenomenon and feet on the ground effect. So isn't it possible that even there you get false positives, in the sense that your levels are too high and that you start to think like something is wrong? Or shouldn't you take maybe a C-peptide test or so, or look at... That's totally different story, maybe complicating as well. But why do we have to use the fasting insulin? So
that's why, if you combine it, if you throw another one in there, which is a measure of inflammation, from the liver, C-peptide, that makes it even more of a optimal composite inference there. The fasting insulin, I think, is a better test. It's not without its flaws, like you just said. If you have to inject more insulin because of the dawn effect, well, then if you get a fasting insulin test done in the morning when you're fasted, well, then it can still show a false positive.
Same issue with fasting glucose. Well, just the counterpart.
And the triglycerides, man. If someone's eating fat, like, they don't fast, right? That's crazy.
Right. Or if they're losing fat, you could actually have an inflated triglyceride level, because a lot of people don't know this, but the body can oftentimes break down more fat than it can even use at that time of breakdown. And so it will recycle it to store it again. You're still continuously losing fat, but through glyceroneogenesis, a pathway that's not even talked about in biochemistry, like mainstream biochemistry classes, you will recycle that fat and recycle the glycerol as well a lot of times. And you will store the fat back into your fat cells. And then you're still using some, you're still breaking down fat as a net loss of fat. But you can see that on a blood test, like, oh wow, your triglycerides are high, and it's like, well, I'm not eating carbs though. And it's like, okay, so if there actually is a problem, if this is really indicative of a problem, you might just be overeating on protein or fat. We can look at that. However, a lot of times there might not be a problem at all. Like it's not a problem. It's actually indicative of a good thing, which is that you're losing fat that is inhibiting mobility, that is inhibiting your metabolism a bit. But so fasting insulin, the reason, to get back to Peter's point, I mean, I think that it's a better test to employ, because a fasting insulin test is, if you have throughout the day a higher basal level of insulin and it continues to creep up, that is a sign that you're becoming more and more insulin resistant. And I put it in quotes, not because it particularly doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the way people say it exists. That's the main problem. It doesn't exist in the way people say it exists, which is, oh, well, the more insulin you have in the blood, the more your cells become desensitized to it, because it's been, it's getting used to it. It's like, that is not what happens. What happens is that it needs more insulin to push glucose more in, because you're filling it up with a bunch of fat. And then therefore, I mean, effectively it's analogous to the Randall cycle. You've got fat in the cells, and the glucose therefore can't get in, because when it does get in under the influences of insulin, it's going to be converted to more fat. But every cell has a maximum rate of hypertrophy. And we already see that even with the maximum rate of hypertrophy, the growth of a cell, there are still compounds that release from these fat cells in these people that are overweight, that are like inflammatory, these inflammatory cytokines. You still see these things that initiate inflammation. So even then, it's like the door is about to burst. And so it's a sign, it's indicative of, okay, you might be able to catch diabetes years in advance if you just look at a fasting insulin, depending on the context in which you are to measure the fasting insulin. Understanding that there's still a chance of making a false positive, which is, a problem that it's always a limitation. There's always a limitation to everything. And so I'm glad that, you brought that up, Peter, because you're someone that actually, you have a better understanding of insulin regulation than the average person, because you're the one that has to deal with injecting it.
Well, one thing that I always think is that they make things complicated with insulin resistance and fasting levels of insulin. And as a diabetic, I look basically at how much is my daily total. And I think if people would use that, then you're always fine. I mean, if you start to eat more carbs, the daily total goes up. If you fast, it goes like towards 20% of it. But if I'm insulin resistant, it will, well, between quotes, but it will go up, and so on and so on. And so if I compare my carbohydrate-rich diet from the past, where I used 40 units, now I use 25 a day or so, then overall, to me, that says that I'm insulin sensitive, still in the same way, and I can check it in other ways. I mean, I can inject a bit and see how much my blood levels drop, and that's all fine. But if you summarize it with the daily total, it always is sort of comes along.
Yeah, it would be great if they had a continuous insulin meter, but that's going to be.
Well,
I have it.
Try and go get a doctor.
My hands.
Not being a diabetic, go try and in Canada anyway, go try and get a fasting insulin test. Good luck. Doctors won't do it.
Yeah. We even have that problem here in the States. I mean, there's people because one reason is also because the doctor hasn't even heard of it before. They don't even know where to order it. They're like, what is that? And it's a shame that they don't understand it, but I mean, we're making strides in understanding metabolism more, and really, it's not even really understanding metabolism more. It's now connecting metabolism to diet like more accurately, because a lot of the stuff we've actually known for a while, and then it's like now it's become relevant to take a look back at it 30 years ago and go, oh yeah, right. So we already knew that, but we just weren't talking about it. That's a lot of it. So yeah.
Well, I remember when I first started low carb, I was testing my ketones, pricking my finger, I was pre-diabetic, and I was watching these numbers like it was the word of God. And then I realized what Mark said was, I realized there was a point where, the P strip stopped working. Then my mojo was like, the ketones were coming down, and I was like, what's going on? And I figured it out. I was like, wait a minute, you're getting more efficient. And I feel great. I could tell when my body went out of ketosis back into ketosis by how well I could pee. And it was that easy. I was like, oh my Lord, this is it. It was just it's unbelievable. And
but it doesn't go down for everybody, the ketone levels, right? So I'm wondering if that means that they are less efficient, or are they producing more?
So it's highly individual as well. Like basically what my point is that if you have a low ketone reading, that's not necessarily indicative of a problem. If you have a normal ketone reading that's deemed to be what's to be expected, then it's also, then you have nothing to worry about in the first place. Because here's something interesting. Here's a perfect example of this. The majority of people that I hear about when they talk about what happens after they eat a meal that's a carnivorous meal, they say that they get bumped out of ketosis. They see a bump with their glucose. They see, all that stuff. And they go, and we've been saying, many people have been saying that's normal. That's what's supposed to happen. Well, some people, like Coach Stephen Thomas, when he did his experiment a few months ago, saw that he went into even deeper ketosis. It's completely, it's the biodiversity element is something to not be ignored. And so therefore, that's why it's so dangerous. Might be in a more a hyperbolic term, but sometimes depending on the context, it very well can be dangerous. But it's irresponsible at the very least to make definite like absolute measurements of like health like that are, because they're all arbitrary. It's like it's all individual. If you're going to say, oh well, 90% of people get bumped out of ketosis after they're eating a carnivorous meal, but then the other 10% don't. And that's fine if you want to say that, but then you can't use that to say, oh, the other 10%, we need to get them to be the other 90% within the other 90%. It's like, well, you don't know if that's necessarily indicative of like the best thing. It just depends on what is happening. The only time to really take a look at blood tests and try and infer things from it is if people are actually having symptoms. Like that's the only time to do it, because sometimes it's not to say, like, I've never said that blood tests can't indicate a problem, but you can't look at that and say that there is a problem if the person is feeling better than they ever have. You can't do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I say that too. I say that to people. I'm like, you resolve your skin rashes. Your skin is tighter, dense, you look beautiful, radiant. You're feeling energetic. Your brain fog's gone, but your heart's dying. It's like,
it's like, how does that make any sense? Yeah, it's like, hold on a minute. Like I guess in theory that could make sense. But I've been saying this. It's like, how could a carnivore diet really, like, rationally, reasonably thinking here, how could it cure these purportedly incurable diseases, like things that are like people wouldn't have even dreamed? Even people that are just lay people, like they would look at that and go, okay, there's no getting out of that. That's something that you're going to live with for the rest of your life. Seeing these things ameliorated, like extreme eczema. extreme eczema.
Philip watching right now. He's watching on Instagram. Like he's a perfect example of that. Like he's had psoriasis that was
psoriasis. Yeah.
And like that, you know what I mean? And he's now he's telling people, hey, this is what I did, and it worked.
But magically,
see, that's the problem. And see, you're either going to listen to this guy or you're nuts. It's just going to like, you know, and that's the problem. That's the problem right there, because we've had so many people on this show, and we're amazed at the views. We're like, oh my God, like I can't understand why there's only 100 people watching this. Yeah. Like this should be going, this should be going viral. Like why aren't more people aware of this? You know what I mean?
I'll be sharing this. I'll be sharing this on my channel, so don't worry about that.
It's just incredible.
You know, I think a lot of it, like you mentioned right at the beginning, Eddie, is money and Peter, but he'll come back on eventually.
It looked like a bit of a lag. It didn't look like they intentionally left.
I was just talking about the money and the powers of the algorithm, and that all happened.
And then
that's interesting. So, I think Peter's coming back on now, but here he comes. There he is.
There we go.
Mark did have to leave early.
So Mark caused all the troubles.
Yeah, maybe I don't know what he did, but something happened. I just find that funny. We're talking about.
I have to go in about 10 minutes as well, by the way. So.
Okay. Well.
Just to say.
Peter, you had some stuff that you wanted to play for Eddie to
I have to re-upload it because
good.
It got lost as well. But,
yeah, we have to get you doing your thing, buddy. While you're here, Eddie, like, you know. For anybody that doesn't know who Eddie Goeke is, you got to check out his stuff. He calls out a lot of the non-science, we'll call it, and nonsense around it. And it's beautiful to watch him work. I love it. So we've got something lined up that we'd love to get your take on, Eddie. If Peter can get it up, we're gonna do it.
All right, surprise me with
that.
It
will appear in 5 seconds or so, but then I cannot. Let it wait. It will appear immediately. So.
Oh, okay.
And I just got a comment on Instagram from Crispy Carnivore.
When I started reintroducing carbs after doing keto and carnivore diets for 10 years straight. But actually, it got even better. 100% zero cravings. And now it's so much better because even if I don't get the amount of sleep that I need, or if I am under recovered, I have no more cravings. I'm going to explain why in this video and how you can benefit from curing decades-long eating disordered or food addiction symptoms that you may have struggled with like I did ever since I was 12.
Okay. All
right.
You
can see immediately why Mark wanted to show this video, eating disorders and cravings.
Right. So I really only have 2 things so far to say in response to that because she hasn't said too much. She's introducing what she's about to say. The question that I would have first is, why did you have those cravings in the first place? Okay, because if you're having cravings for carbohydrates, that's a sign not that you're missing carbohydrates, because if that were the case, that would mean necessarily that carbohydrates are essential, aren't they? But they're not. So what are you actually missing if you are having, if you're having these cravings whenever you have gone through something that requires recovery? So, she's talking particularly with regard to high intensity training, which is something that she emphasizes a lot. At this point, it's like one of the only good things that she emphasizes in the first place, but I think she might even emphasize too much exercise. But that's a story for another day. I've seen in her own specific particular food journaling that she does once in a while, it seems that she's having small meals sparsed out throughout the day. They seem to be lower in fat as well. I'm not one to say that there's a blanket like, oh, everyone should be having high protein, moderate fat, or everyone should be having high fat, moderate protein. People are individual in that respect. It's usually done through experimentation, but that clearly that combination of too low of fat, if it was too low for her, and I think it might have been, and also too small of meals sparsed out throughout the day, that's not a good recipe for someone that is engaging in lots of high intensity exercise. That's not good. And so you very well might have that deficiency manifest as carbohydrate cravings. Okay, especially if you were missing out on an insulin response. Well, what's something that's going to stimulate insulin readily? Well, lots of carbohydrates. The second thing So we need more details at the end of the day. Like you were saying, Tony, we need more context. Like whenever someone says this, it made me feel better. We have to look at what you were doing and all that stuff. The second thing that I want to say is a bit of it's another question that I would have for her, which is, okay, a lot of people may not know this. Sarah Zaldivar is someone that she made a module for our coaching program, and it was all we have since removed that. Because of the recent controversy and things that she has done, said to many people, some of which were actually in our coaching program, and it's very, very rude and insensitive what she was saying, but also just the way that she responded to me, which was by not responding, but by blocking me on every platform. If you didn't know that,
apparently people down there that she blocked them on Instagram. I'm just watching the Instagram chat, by the way, a little bit. So yeah, sorry, Eddie, go on.
She did a module on food addiction and dopamine dysregulation. We were actually considering keeping that module because the information was something that I vetted beforehand, and I thought it was actually good material. It is absolutely what she said was true, which is that, carbohydrates are the most dopaminergic macronutrient. If you spike your dopamine, enough of a neurotransmitter will actually kill the brain cells because it'll excite a neuron to death. And as a safety response, the next time that cell divides, you will have less sensitivity to that neurotransmitter to protect itself. So you actually get less sensitive, you get less responsive to dopamine, and you get to an addictive personality kind of thing. And so I thought, well, that's a very good way of explaining to people. Okay, you want to increase baseline dopamine. Ways to do that are healthy and appropriate would be, high intensity training or something. Don't do too much, don't do too little, but that can help, with regulated dopamine. But I would ask her now, if she made that module, and she said that carbohydrates are a main culprit of that, what makes her think that introducing now, again, hundreds of grams, at least I presume is the case if she's a Zane Griggs acolyte, it seems, what makes her think that is what makes her think that that's an appropriate thing to do for regulating dopamine at a healthy level, or at a level that she thinks is healthy? I mean, the only thing, if we're going to steelman her argument, no matter how rude she may be, because it's always on a logical basis, it's the best thing to do. The only thing that she can think of that I can think of that she can actually say to bolster her point, to reinforce it, is, well, the carbohydrates I'm eating aren't as dopaminergic as others because they're not sweet to the taste. She's introducing lots of rice. They're not sweet to the taste, but they still stimulate dopamine, but they're physiologically. They're not immediately dopaminergic, though. She's eating beans. So she's eating some beans as well. They're not sweet either. So they're less dopaminergic, to be fair, sure. However, that's the only argument she can make. And then I would have to ask her, well, what makes you think it's appropriate to be consuming all the things that come alongside those foods? Like, seriously, what were these necessary? And why have you now thought to yourself that it's appropriate to now introduce lots of carbohydrates and simultaneously, as a result of that, decrease your fat even more? Because that's what she's been doing. She's been decreasing her fat as well. And that's a recipe for nutritional deficiencies, which is ironic because other claims that she has made in the past, before she even went down this route, she was saying that carnivore is deficient in nutrition. She was saying that it's deficient in nutrition. I remember her citing specifically boron or something like that.
Yeah, well, but I mean, that can have a lot to do with the quality of your diet. And, we're so far removed from the ancestral way. Our modern day food practices, we don't, you know what I mean? If you don't know exactly where you're getting your stuff from, what the mineral content is, what, you know what I mean? It can be very different. So I don't know.
And Tony, when you say ancestral way of living, then I also think about the exercise part, because most people that start to introduce these carbohydrates, I mean, it's good that we talk about exercise now, but they are training really a lot. And personally, I also notice when I go cycling a lot, especially endurance exercise, but I imagine it's the same if you do in high intensity exercise, like 4 or 5 times a week at these amounts, that you run into troubles and carb cravings.
Yep. Yeah, I think people are exercising too much, and I also think that people are exercising too little. There's a balance that hasn't been had yet. It's either you get people that are exercising like no exercise at all, or they're exercising like 5 to 6 times a week, which I think is just way too much, unless you're actively in the business of being like trying to be a bodybuilder or something, in which case I don't think that's the healthiest thing to do. I mean, that itself, I mean, it's not about health in that case. It's just about building as much muscle as you possibly can within the most efficient amount of time. And so I think that Dr. Zaldivar, she had some claims that I had a slight bone to pick at the time that I interviewed her on my channel over a year ago at this point, about exercise, saying things like, okay, if exercise is hurting you, you might just want to exercise more to get over it, which I said, depending on the context, might be true, because a lot of times, you can get worse before you get better, but sometimes that's a sign to stop. Okay, because like that was the case for me as someone with EDS. I tried to do it, and it's true. It reinforced her point slightly, but also reinforced mine, which was when I started to exercise after years of not exercising at all with EDS, I was in the floor, wasn't able to walk the first time. Then I did it. I still continued to do it. And what happened is every time that I work out, after I've worked out, I felt better than I did the previous time I had just gotten done working out. So true, you adapt. But it still got to a point where I never got to full comfort afterwards. My joints hurt very badly. There is a limit. So it's still, you should still be looking at that. There's a sign like that you need to listen to your body. I know that sometimes it can be counterproductive. Sometimes it's telling you things like, oh, well, I have cravings for carbohydrates. Well, that doesn't mean you should be going after them. Like sometimes you still have to employ your rational intellect to feelings in your body. But I mean,
you make a good point there, Eddie, because I was, now knowing what I know, I was severely sugar addicted. I would have told you that I wasn't at the time, but now, learning all this stuff, reversing my pre-diabetes, getting my metabolism in check, I feel great. Mm-hmm. How would be adding back in the things that got me there? Now that I know that, ever be okay? I'm not talking I'm not talking about a holiday meal with potatoes. I mean, saying carbohydrates are good after what I've gone through does not make sense to me, man. And that's what blows my mind about this stuff. It's crazy.
Yep. Totally agreed.
And I mean, I just look at it from Peter's standpoint too. Like, Peter, what you start bringing in sugar and carbs back into your day to day, what happens? It goes bad quickly.
Yeah, most type 1 diabetics, they actually, they're told by their doctors, here's your insulin, but also keep eating carbohydrates regularly. And what happens is, what starts to happen is these type 1 diabetics, they start to balloon, they start to get fat.
Very easily.
Yes, because what you're doing, and also it is not saving you money to use that much insulin. I'll tell you that right now. Like the amount of insulin you have to use when you're eating carbohydrates regularly, and it's not just the absolute quantity, it's the amount of times per day that you're eating them, because spike crash. Like you're having to eat them regularly every day, which also contributes to the quantity of them that you're eating, like hundreds of grams.
Let me say that they made the concentration of insulin that high. I mean, they have U100 insulin nowadays, and it was U40, I think. And there's even being low carb, I waste really a lot of insulin, because every time I take half a unit, a tiny unit, I have to fill the needle and if you have an insulin pump, I waste like easily 20-30% of my insulin. I mean, that's insanity if you think about the price.
Yep. And that's another problem, because 95% of these people are eating carbohydrates because that's what they're told to do by their doctor. So it's like, and then you get the diabulimia situation as a result of that, where people they start to actively
just remove the insulin.
Yeah, they start to actively remove the insulin to lose the weight. That's a serious problem that people have too, which is really dangerous to them, because then they have hyperglycemia that's wreaking havoc on themselves. But it's all about the external appearance. Like, oh, I'm gaining weight. Well, I can easily just stop my insulin and for just a little bit and get back to a healthy weight.
And you said something there too. It's like, we know excess glucose in the blood is toxic. So how does this justify doing this, whatever, hundreds of grams of carbohydrates?
Well, I'll tell you why. The reason that they think the reason why they're doing this is because I understand the argument thoroughly. Rob Siwas made this argument months ago. He was like the first one I heard to actually make this argument, and it was about insulin suppression. By the way, he didn't just make this argument a few months ago. He made it about.
I heard him say this a couple of years ago, actually.
Yeah, a couple of years ago he said this. Yeah. It's just it became more prominent, once he actually came out and actually said that he was just eating carbohydrates. And then it didn't help his case, by the way, as a tangential note before I really get into what I was wanting to say, that he literally said, well, I'm a fat guy. I'm a fat guy. And the reason for that is because I eat carbs, but as long as I'm within this range, I feel
And I'm the carb addiction doc.
Yeah, I'm the carb addiction. Yeah, that's why my video response to him was just called Carb Addicted Doc. Because it's carb addicted. That's what it is. Like, how can you? Oh man, it was horrible. It was horrible marketing on his part to be called the carb addiction doc, and then coming out with a video saying I'm a fat guy and it's because I eat carbs, and it's like, okay, but he is
at least mentioning a sort of range, right? I don't know what the range is, but it's not like 200 grams a day.
So he said it was 20 to 50. I believe he said 20 20 grams. Now, do I actually think that 20 grams is what's making him fat? By the way, I don't even know. I really don't know about that.
Come on, man. No.
Like it makes me think it's either more or there's something else he's doing, like on his carnivore diet that maybe is putting a barrier there for him that's hard for him to get through. But either way, he made this argument, which is so insulin suppression. If you're eating very low carbohydrate, what can happen is you get too low of insulin, too high of glucagon, and the influence of glucagon is producing more glucose than the genes are designed to withstand. And you can actually paradoxically, having low carbohydrate diets, you can have higher glucose that can cause heart disease and whatever. It's unfortunate though, because if someone's actually having that problem, like if that's actually, which has not been seen in the literature, by the way, and it's not to say you don't want to make an appeal to ignorance fallacy, which means that just because something hasn't been observed, it means it doesn't exist. Like, okay, it's like, oh, well, aliens don't exist because there's been no proof of it. It's like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't exist, right? But it is true then that means that it's merely a theory. It is a theory at this point in time. If people are actually having that problem though, does that mean that they should be consuming carbohydrates, or does that mean that maybe they're having too low of insulin because they're not eating the carnivore diet in the ancestrally appropriate way? I just made another video recently that'll be coming out, which is all about how this claim that we're cult members because, oh, you sound just like the vegans nowadays. Oh, you did it wrong. And it's like, hold on a second. The reason that vegans are cult members isn't because whenever someone transgresses from veganism, they say, you just did it wrong. That's actually not the reason why they're cult members. The reason they're cult members is because whenever you transgress from the movement, you are looked at as complicit in genocide and holocaust of animals, and you're looked at as a piece of shit. That is why they're cult members. It is not cultic to say, maybe if you're having problems on a diet that approximates an ancestrally consistent diet, that maybe it was because it wasn't absolutely ancestrally consistent and you should probably approximate it even more. That is not cultic. What I would say to those people is I would ask them a question. Well, what do you think is the optimal diet how do you think people should be eating? And they would go, oh, okay, well, this way. And I go, okay, what happens when people are having problems on that diet then? What would you say to them? They go, they have two options. They can either say, well, I would tell them that it might be because they're doing this and they should be changing it. In which case I would say, oh, you're cultic. Oh my God, you're cultic.
Yeah.
Or they could say, oh, well, then I would just tell them to eat whatever they want then, whatever makes them feel better. To which I would say, so you don't think that every species has one diet for its speciation then? Because that's just an absolute fact that is true, and therefore you're wrong there too. You can't just sit here and say if someone feels better eating Twinkies and Ding Dongs every day, that's something that they should be doing. That doesn't make any sense. It's like, oh, well, as long as it makes you feel good. Okay, well, you might as well shoot up heroin and do cocaine then, right? Because that makes you feel better. That'll hide a bunch of symptoms and ostensibly fix those. So there's no, it's silly to say that that's what that's a cult. A cult is we're precisely the opposite of cult, by the way. Which is that because what we say is, hey, this is what we believe to be the ideal. If you deviate away from the ideal, do whatever you want. I don't care, but just don't say that it's based in fact. Just say that it's based in your opinion, and we're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
That is not cultic.
No.
If there were a vegan on this panel right now that we're actually rational, we could have a conversation with, I would do it. As long as they would sit here and say, this is what I do based on this, and people can do whatever they want. Yeah. But there's almost no vegan that is like that, because veganism, as they say from their own mouths, is not about health. It's about ethics. And therefore, they would never be on a panel with someone that eats a bunch of animal products, unless it's in a debate format where they're trying to convince us and persuade us to be vegan. So there you go.
Supplements are better, right? Supplements are better. That's the other argument. Right. It's like, oh, you don't need this, so supplement. Anyway, I think that's the best thing. Like on our channel, all of us that talk this way, like, this is what I do. I do this. Is it right? I don't even know. I just feel pretty good. And I think people should be paying attention to the people that are resolving impossible health conditions. That is the power. You know what I mean? Somebody has cured there or reversed there or doesn't have cancer anymore. Like when people, that's what freaks me out. Is like if I heard that and I had cancer, I would I would be like, okay, wow, I want to know what you did. And that's where I seen this pushback where people have a problem with carnivore, but yet they have a problem with people healing in impossible situations. That blows my mind when they speak out against it. And do what you want. Like, I mean, if you want to be a vegan, that's your prerogative. I don't agree with it, but that's your choice. But that seems to be the a lot of the preachy people now, the carnivores that are jumping ship and doing carbs are preaching this. Like, they're saying this is the way, and that freaks me out.
It demonstrates a complete lack of integrity. And this also, by the way, I mean, to get to your other point where you said, this is what I do. Is this even right? I don't even know. I think there's a middle ground that I'm at, which is, I think I'm 100% confident in saying that our species appropriate diet is carnivorous. Yeah. What is uncertain is the specific variation that's best for everyone. That is what I think. I don't think we'll ever actually have a complete answer for that, because I've said that there's minimal variation around the diet, depending on your needs, depending on your activities, and also depending where you live, and also depending like on your genetic circumstances, like how you evolved. Every species has a similar diet, but it has very, very minimal variation. You got to think, with humans, we're the most ubiquitous species on the planet. So we might have even more variation than other animals. But it's one of those things where I don't like the argument that's also being said by these people jumping ship. First of all, because of the hypocrisy, like we've already covered, but also because of just the erroneousness of it, which is the claim that we are dogmatic. You know, it's dogmatic to say that we're carnivorous, like to say it's a fact that we're carnivorous. And it's like, well, is it dogmatic to say that a lion is a carnivore? It's not dogmatic to represent certain truths because they hold constant. Just because something holds constant and is eternal does not mean that it is dogmatic, therefore, at least in the definition that they're using. Because in the formal definition of dogma, by the way, it actually technically is, because dogma includes things that are truthful as well. You can have dogma that's true. Like, that's not, so dogma isn't even necessarily negative as long as it's based in truth. Like, I have sets of dogma that I espouse, which is carbohydrates are not required for human consumption. That's a piece of dogma. Yeah. Yes. It's like, that's a piece of dogma. It's dogmatic. It's catchy. It's like people understand that. What's another? I mean, human nutrition science isn't science. That's a piece of dogma. There you go. But I mean, it's like, that doesn't mean that it's bad. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. But even just to use their definition, it's not even appropriate to use that word in their definition, because in their definition, dogma involves falsehoods. It involves cult-like behavior. We already covered the cult part. And then when it comes to the falsehoods, well, tell us what's false. Seriously, tell us what's false. And if you believe it's false, you're going to have to provide some actual evidence of that, or else you're just positing a theory and you may or may not be correct, which is all of what human nutrition science is, by the way, now since I mentioned it. It's like, that's it. It's that easy. But to call us dogmatic because that's really what they're saying. When they say that we're dogmatic, they're saying we're cult members. We're cultic. You know, don't get in that crowd. Don't stay in that, because oh boy, once you're in there, if you decide to leave, if you decide to jump ship, as you've been saying, Tony, well, that you're going to be chastised for it. It's like, no one's chastising people for transgressing. We're chastising people for saying this is why everyone else should transgress, and it's based on a bunch of falsehoods and it's a bunch of misinterpretations, fear mongering, and as we now see, vested interests and money, unfortunately. So that's really, I hope that just clears up everything that we.
I love it. Yes,
every attack that we had. Yeah,
right? I mean, and it's so, we just try to scream out from the rooftops that people are doing great things. I mean, people talk about, have you noticed this? Like, carnivores are pretty cool people. Like, it's pretty wild to watch these people that are very, receptive and embracive. They all, we're all in the same kind of, like, we've got the same demeanor. We're really cool. Like, meeting Peter and Mark on this show, like on this chat, like it was amazing. Like, these guys are two guys, one from Holland, one from Ireland, and I'm from Canada, and we're convening on these social media groups, meeting each other. And now we've been, doing this for a little over a year now, or almost a year now. And it's amazing. And, the carnivore community that's part of this on Instagram right now, they're insane. They're awesome. They're just having conversations. They're not preaching any science. They're just getting together, it's not a cult, but they're getting together, saying their stories and sharing their lives. And it's wild to see how people are switching that, and you can see that there's a push. look at what happens with our government and how they don't want us to eat meat. Like that's
Right.
a whole other time we need you back on to talk about. Like that's a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I would just pose a question to anyone that says that we're cultic. Would Mark or would coaches like Mark introduce carbohydrates into someone's diet, in his client's diet, if we're actually cult members? I mean, really?
Yeah.
Like, would he actually be doing that? Would you ever see a vegan coach doing that with meat?
Yeah, right.
You'd
I
never.
think you'd be better off eating a piece of butter. You need a little butter. Just
Yeah.
break the vegan.
It's like, they'd be chastised by their own client, probably. I mean, like they'd be like, "How? What are you talking about? Are you actually a true vegan?" I mean, that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest tell right there. Like, what happens when people start to transgress or they're feeling poorly? Do you deny their experiences, or do you accept them and try and work with them with it? I mean,
yeah. Well, I've had some clients that are vegans, and I've helped them be better vegans when they plug
right?
some holes,
Yes.
right. Like they have to do this, and they feel better. You know what I mean? I'm not thinking that it's their optimal diet, but at the same time, it was for religious reasons. They had to,
Yeah.
You have to work with that. And I'm not trying to convince them to go carnivore. I'm trying to work with them with essential nutrients, and there's holes and good, better, best situations. And that's the one thing I find that's like, I don't care if anybody eats blueberries. Sure. Eat blueberries. That doesn't mean you're not a carnivore. That doesn't mean, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean
that too. It's like, I'm not carnivore anymore because I had like a handful of pomegranate arrows or something. And it's like, oh, well, I mean, you still are, but I mean, if you want to say you're not anymore, then fine. But yeah, this is why I've said that like vegans, I know this is getting, I don't even really mean to emphasize too much on the veganism thing, but since we're talking about cults, I mean, I'm not even trying to be facetious. Like it's literally a cult. This is why I've always said vegans hate humans more than they love animals. That's really what it comes down to. That is what I say all the time, because at the end of the day, if you take that same example that we're using right now, that same analogy or whatever of the vegan coach and the vegan physician and the vegan client or patient, and the vegan patient and client has been on done every single variation of veganism that they can, they're feeling horrible. They feel worse and worse every time.
Yeah.
Then what if they finally get to a point where they're like, I think I'm going to have to introduce meat again, or even at least eggs and like butter or whatever, dairy. If the response by that physician or coach is, no, you're unethical or whatever, they hate humans more than they love animals, because they'd rather see a human possibly die, like possibly seriously die, than see an animal die. And at that point, it's like, well, okay, so you're going to say, you therefore, the logical extension of that is to sacrifice all humans for cows and chickens and all that. It's like, sorry, that's not ethical. That is not ethical. No. If we can't even have a conversation about the ethics of diet if you believe that human life and animal life are necessarily in every single way equal. I don't know. We literally can't have that argument. All life is equal across the board. It's like, really, the ant that I stepped on this morning was equivalent to my value of life? Like, seriously? Really?
And then, I mean, that opens up a whole new world, man. Like, you got to get mad at the birds for killing birds and lions.
Some kind of dream world that they are chasing. And that's why most of vegans, they become vegan when they are like 12, 14-year-old girls or that age. I mean, then you're sensitive to all this stuff. So.
Uh-huh. I have someone in my book, Josie Leader, the ex-plant eater. You may have seen her on Instagram before. She provided her anecdote to me, and she said the same thing. She was like, "Yeah, I was misled. I was beguiled, and I was lulled into this ideology because of documentaries, like sentimental, treacly documentaries about animal deaths, and it gets people, especially when they're young like that, and I mean, especially when they're more sentimental naturally, women are going to be more susceptible to that. That's just how things go, because men and women are different. I know. Oh, shocker. But like that's going to happen. And then eventually they're going to have to learn the hard way. If they learn ever that, okay, this is not actually ethical, because look at what I'm doing to my own body. Like, is this really ethical? Is it really ethical to do that to myself? Like, to basically commit suicide slowly.
Yeah. Torture yourself into, whatever end game is. It's not good, right?
Yep, exactly.
Well, we just took a turn into the vegan aspect of things, but you know what, Peter, how are you doing for time? We probably should.
Well, yeah,
wind this up.
Let's say my time is up, but
Yeah, mine is.
I
mine is
enjoyed
as well.
you being here at least. This was very nice.
Well, Eddie,
Yeah, no, this is fun.
Thanks for coming on and shedding some light and your perspective on things, because it's unreal how we're watching these things transpire, and I'm if I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second, there's got to be some other perspective that we're not seeing, and I agree with you. I think there's some people being paid off, and I think it's unfortunate that I think that's the way the world's headed in a lot of different aspects, and.
Yeah, it's one thing to make money off of something that you believe in. It's another thing to believe in something because you're making money off of it. That's a totally different situation. So,
yeah. And I mean, when you look at celebrities and endorsements, man, we could probably have another talk about the Serena Williams, all the celebrities.
Oh yeah.
Right. But Eddie, we'd love to have you back on. Thanks for coming back and hanging out with us, man. I love doing this. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I love it hearing the scientific side of things that hopefully puts into people's perspective that are watching. And where do people find you? Tell them about your book and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I'm primarily present on YouTube. I'm releasing every day now. I'm trying to be as prolific as possible, spreading the message. Like I said, if they're going to talk, I'm going to yell. That's the idea. I'm going to spread it as fast as possible, as effectively as possible. And then I also am present on Instagram. I don't post normally there. However, I do make my opinions known in other ways on Instagram. And also I do respond to DMs and all that whenever I can. My email, if people want to directly email me about something, edgoeke@pm.me. That's for Proton Mail. And then also in terms of my book is available in paperback, hardcover, ebook on Amazon. It's Contraindicated, a closer look and revision of mainstream health axioms that have perpetuated illness, disorder, and disease for over a century. Second edition is out now as well, so it's even better than the first. But that'll be found on Amazon, but also the ebook is found on basically any place that you can find an ebook. I mean, Rakuten Kobo, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, Google Play Books, all that stuff. So it's also available on Kindle as well. So,
well, it's a great read. I really like. It's an amazing reference book. Like if you get any carnivores or any people that are starting out on the diet that want to have certain points will come up that you can reference. It's beautiful, like how the chapters are laid out. So great job, and thank you for that. And thanks for being here, man. We really appreciate it. Peter, anything? Any last words?
No. Thank you very much. Interesting as always.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome. Well, we are live every Sunday. The Meat of the Matter at 10 a.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. in the UK and Ireland, 7 p.m. in Netherlands and in Europe. Eddie Goeke is the man. Check him out. Follow him. He's one of us, and he's an ambassador for our way, our movement, not our cult or anything like that. Thanks.
Yeah, our cult. Yeah.
See you later, everybody. Thanks for watching.